Okay, Michelle. So here we are 5 years later.
Yes.
Um, no, I mean, one of the things about you I think of all the time is you literally have been here the entire 5 years of Reiki Radio.
Oh,
And you were one of the people that inspired me to do my first online course and like kept me going over the years when I wanted to quit, because there were a lot of times I wanted to just throw in the towel. So I'm glad that you're able to come today and share your experiences with Reiki.
oh my gosh. I can't believe it's been 5 years. And it makes me so happy that I've been there with you through your journey with Reiki Radio and from day one. I'll never forget the first time I plugged in. I was on the bus going to work and I'm like, I need some new podcast. I need to listen to something. I can't deal with this bus and, life. I needed me time. And I was diving deep into Reiki at that point. And I see, oh, Reiki Radio. Clicked on that and then heard your beautiful voice, soft spoken, beautiful Yolanda. I said, oh my gosh. I'm like, I love her. And it's been, 5 years later.
Years.
Just such a like beautiful connection. And I feel like it goes beyond this lifetime. So I'm
Oh,
just glad
honey, we do.
we connect. And it's just been amazing, right?
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, I mean, it's one of those things where, you're one of those people, like, I'm so thankful for the connection we have, and I love that we have stayed in touch all these years, and that I've literally been able to watch your unfolding. So that's one of the things I wanted to ask you about today, because although I have seen how much you have grown, what has this process been like for you of just like working with Reiki through these years? Like, how has it helped you personally, and what have you learned about you and people in life?
It just like constant of like unpeeling the onion. And I guess it just in the beginning, it was more the curiosity, like, oh, wow, like I'm drawn to this. Like, I know there's something, a deeper meaning beyond all of this, what we experience in life. But it's been hard,
Yes. Yes.
not easy. And we were just talking yesterday. I think I was texting you yesterday saying, I don't want to do this. Why am I doing this? I don't want to look at my stuff. This is uncomfortable. I just want to go back to not knowing.
Yeah.
Like days that you just want to go back to not knowing. But then once you get past it and move through that uncomfortable stage, we always talk about that. You have those aha moments. Okay, I see, and it just makes sense, but it's uncomfortable. Like
Yes.
it's always worked. Like it's not going to stop. It will never stop, and you just have to accept it and move on.
Jennifer just attended. I just want to let you guys know that if you have the option of turning on your video and your microphone if you want to join the conversation. But I'm so glad you said that, because that's exactly why I started the podcast. Because back then, I mean, 5 years doesn't seem like a long time ago, but back then there was no information about what happens to us after Reiki class.
Right.
And nobody said, oh, you're going to start moving energy and you're going to feel like you are in hell sometime.
Yeah.
Like no
Right.
one told me that. It was all like, oh, it's light and love. So I thought it was really important to share like what it is we experience after, but also that people know that it is. It's like some days you're all in, some days you feel like crap, but it's okay.
It's okay, and it's completely normal. And you're constantly learning and about yourself, about others, about everything you experience. But I think the great thing about your show and just the way you help and guide others is that you make it it's like a gentleness. You help the transition, at least for me anyway.
Yeah.
And I would others who take your class and are students of yours feel the same way. It's just like, well, there's a realness to it. So it's no like foo-foo, like there's no, like you said, oh, it's all love and light. No, it's not always love and light, and that's okay. But you just like help guide us to just accept what is, whatever needs to move through will move through. It's okay if you have those days.
Yes.
And don't judge yourself. Be gentle, kind with yourself, have compassion with yourself, and you'll just grow and you'll expand to the next level, I guess. So I think that's what, at least for me and you, ew, this bee is attacking me. Sorry. I don't know. I just, for all the teachers I've met in the past, like, or that I've worked with, it just, you have a very like gentle approach. I don't know if that's right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. And it's funny, you know, even hearing you say that, yeah, I mean, because one of my main things is I want to make sure that people don't beat themselves up through the process. I mean, that's the one of the main challenges in all of this is we have these ideas and expectations of what it should be and how far we should progress. And so it's like, I'm not going to beat you up. I'm hopefully going to remind you that that's not necessary. And let's just see what we're learning, like, because you're learning about you. But one of the things with you that's coming up to ask you, because I, again, have seen how much you have grown and changed and like all of the different things that have come into your awareness over the years. For people who are, you know, in their practice, how would you describe that? Like, if you look back now at where you were, say 5 years ago, were there points where you were like, oh my gosh, I can't believe where I am now? Or is it one of those things like you really have to reflect on?
oh yeah, no way. Actually, you know what? I do have to reflect on it because you forget so quickly how you forget where you
Yes.
came from.
Yes.
Like, you always ask us to be mindful of that and remember where you came from. You know, how I used to be afraid of everything that I would see or sense or touch or, you know, in sessions and meditation. What was that? How many times? I mean, I feel like I repeat myself when we connect, but it's true. How many times over the years have I ran to you, Yolanda, I need your help, connect with me. Something's going on in my house. You know, I'm worried about Gavin. Like, I just never had the confidence it took a long time. And I still, like, I don't want to say I have this great confidence and I feel like I can conquer everything, but I'm not like using you as a crutch for everything.
Yes.
I know that I have the ability to lift the vibrations of my home. I have the ability to protect my own space without having you to clear or protect
Yes.
it for me. And even when I was texting you the other day, when I was in meditation and I just felt some like weird energy in my house and I was freaked out. I mean, you know, we're human. So it's like, you're not going to be able to always have that confidence, I guess. But then I just went back to practicing the being in my authority. And I think I was telling you, I smelled like cigarette smoke, like while like lifting up the vibrations in the home. And I just felt the energy in the room off. And just like they say, if like a presence or something comes into your space, you will sometimes smell something,
Yep.
whether it could be flowers and it was a very, very like strong odor of cigarettes. And it was somebody who was not of the highest vibration, let's just say. I could feel it. And instead of me freaking out, I sat in my authority and I did my prayer protection. And I just said, you know, basically, see ya, you're not welcome here. Go into the light. Only the highest vibrations allowed in the space. I called in my angels, and as quickly as the smell came in was as quickly as it left. And it just proved to me in that moment that, wow, I can do this. Like,
Yes.
you can do it.
Well, that's one of the things I think is so important because a lot of people ask me about that, like intuitive development, like why it's important or why it even matters. And I just want to point out, like for Reiki, it's not necessary that you have to read the people that you work on. I mean, you do start to have an awareness of maybe the different types of energies people hold. But more than anything, I think what it does is it gives you that trust. It gives you the confidence and it gives you that feeling of like safe and understanding that you are the one that has the choice of managing your field and clearing your home and all of these different things. And that has been a huge unlayering for you.
I mean, big time, and just trusting again. And that's like, and it's a lot of work. Like, I wish it wasn't. I wish it was easy. I could just blink my eye or snap my finger and the house is clear or my space is clear or whatever, you know, but it's tough, but you just, you know, you have to make the time. You have to do the work. Like, you have to do the work. Practice your practice. You want
Yes.
more about yourself. You want to learn more about energy work and Reiki and how it works. If you're not having clients or you're not, working on as many people as you can, work on yourself. Practice self-healing, right? Like,
Yep.
practice on your family. Like, just, you have to practice.
Well, one of the things I wanted to ask you too, because a lot of people will discredit what comes up for them if it wasn't taught in class. But as you know, you learn so much through your practice outside of class. So is there anything that stands out to you about what you learned just, again, through your practice that isn't necessarily like in a Reiki book?
Yeah, just once you ground and you connect with you before a session, and you do all the work that you do to prepare for a session or whatever you're doing. If you're guided to, at that point, I mean, you should definitely be in a space where, and that's I guess goes back to making sure you're grounded, but also making sure you're connected to your higher self. So you want to do that, like whatever ritual you do to get into a space of
Right.
of connecting with your higher self and grounding before you do any type of Reiki session is so important, because once you're in that space, you're going to be guided, and you're calling in the highest vibration. So you're going to be guided to do what you're guided to do, whether it's not different movement with your hands, whether it's dancing, whether it's you going to different parts of the room that maybe weren't cleared well enough. Like, just don't doubt yourself. Do not doubt yourself, because you're already in a space of protection. You're already in a space of connecting with your higher self. And as long as you're grounded, like, don't dismiss it. Like, oh, why you want me to do what with my hands? That's weird. Like, no, like, just don't doubt it.
Okay, this is the last question I have for you. I know you're on a lunch break, but I wanted to ask you too, what would you how would you describe the process of like constantly being in your practice? Because I know you know this. I mean, you are using different tools and, connecting with your own energy and like every day, like at work, with your child and, relationship, your house. So that I wanted to ask you about, because a lot of people think it's like a separate thing. Like, I practice over here and then I'm in my regular life.
Oh yeah, like I learned that really quickly, and I remember when my son was born, thinking that, oh, okay, well, I'm never going to have time to do this again, and it's completely opposite. In fact, when he was born, it just got stronger.
Yes.
My intuitive development, my meditation practice, and also I was yearning for that as well. But I mean, I'll be meditating with my son sitting next to me, he's playing with his cars. I close my eyes and I tune in to me quickly. And you just make the time. Like, and I was telling one of our friends who's in the seeker circle, Christy, I was texting her that if, you have time for, or if I have time to binge watch, The Office, you make time to watch Netflix, and you make time for, it's like silly things. You can make time to connect with you. I'm in the car before I walk into the office. I go find, like right now, I'm literally outside of my office building in a field, a weirdo on my phone, but I don't care, because I can make the time instead of sitting at my desk, eating my lunch and, scrolling through the news. Like, and the universe will provide for you, will open up doors for you if you think that you're not gonna, I can never gonna find the time. Like,
Yes.
you just think that you really want to deepen your practice, like already set that intention, but get that out of your head, and you just you make the time, like you fit it in. You have to. So
yeah, no, we totally do. And I think that's a good encouraging message for everyone, because again, like, I think that's one of the things people struggle with is like, do I have the time for this? And I have this life, and like, it's this kind of battle. But
I'm finally doing, I know, one more quick thing, because it's up to share with, how that goes. Don't forget, say this. All right. It's crazy person in the field talking to herself. I'm doing yoga teacher training. I'm committing to this. It's something I've been struggling with for years now. Years. I've been practicing yoga for 15 years, been wanting to do it, and I'm doing it. signed up. I start tomorrow. It's going to be a big commitment, 6 months after work hours, weekends. At the same time this is all happening, I'm possibly maybe starting a new job.
Yeah.
So, and where I have to, and you know this, I'm studying for tests, and again, fall equinox, it's time for change. Everything's happening.
Yep.
The message I keep on getting is that, like, you can do both. You can do both. Like, you have to be focused, which you are. You're determined. You'll be able to do both and integrate both.
Yep.
Like with your new job and with your world of yoga and meditation and Reiki, like you'll be able to do both and integrate both and how so that was really powerful, and I just wanted to share that with everyone. If anyone's like on the fence of making that leap, just trust that you can do it. Like, you can do it. So you can do it.
That is such a good message, because I think it's one of those things, a lot of times we look at other people and think we can't do what they're doing. Like, oh, I don't know how they're doing it, there's no way I can. But it's like the only difference between us and those people is that they did it. You know what I mean? Like, they didn't just, because it's our minds, and we'll make excuses and stories of like why it doesn't work. And when you finally get to that place of, you know what, I'm just going to, the next thing you know, there it is. You're doing it. Mm-hmm.
Like, only you. And even my teacher, who's starting up the class, said to me, you know, the only regret I have is that I didn't do this sooner. So just like take that leap. And and I love you so much, Yolanda. I can't believe it's been 5 years, and like, just you've been here with me with my journey and helped me so much, and like, I've grown so much because of you, and I love you so much.
Oh, honey, I love you too.
Happy it's been 5 years to another 5 years.
Honey, right? Are you kidding me? We have a lifetime now. Like, we're committed, we're all in. And I'm excited for you and your yoga training. After you go through that, I would love for you to come and share that experience, because it changes you.
I know, and I heard you were telling me it's emotional, so just add that to the list.
Yeah, honey, just try to ground and meditate today, just to prepare yourself, just like, okay, getting ready for this new cycle. You're about to go into a whole new cycle.
You know, I'm so excited.
I'm excited for you, my love. Thank you so much for coming on your lunch break.
Thank you. I love you. Enjoy the rest.
I love you too.
Okay, bye, guys.
Bye. And so, always, I get so excited to hear everyone's stories and watch the development, the unfolding, because again, the reason I started the podcast is there was no one around talking about what happens to us. And, it was years later that I had the experience of what I call spiritually undone, that a lot of people call the dark night of the soul. But the point is that in this process of self-connection and healing and like tuning more deeply into our self-love, there's, some challenges in that, because we have to look at what we're holding and make the choice of what we're going to do with these energies. And if we are going to allow ourselves to be forgiving and compassionate and all of these things. And it takes effort, it takes practice. So again, I just want to let you know, if you are here and you want to share or chat, you have complete reign of your own video and microphone. And I would love to hear from you about your experiences. One of the things too I want to say is I'm so thankful for everyone who tunes into Reiki Radio, whether it is you're brand new to the show or like Michelle, you've been here for the entire 5 years, because truly there have been so many times in the process where I just wanted to throw in the towel and I'm like, I can't do it. I did take a year off, which was good and necessary, but I'm so thankful to be back and to be able to share with so many of you in a more personalized way in the seeker circle. So it's been phenomenal, but I want to continue these conversations and continue to grow our community. And if you have any questions about your practice, if you have any questions about what it is that's coming up for you, I am here for you. I'm trying to see, it says someone else is trying to join, but for some reason they're like invisible and I can't add them on. So perhaps they will show up. Another thing that I think is so important for us to talk about, and another reason why I started Reiki Radio, is I'm sure all of you know by now, especially if you are new to Reiki or have researched Reiki, there's so much information out there about Reiki. And so it can be really confusing, you know, when you're trying to understand what's true and what do I practice. And then we get caught up in that. Am I right? Am I wrong? Am I doing this right? If you are in that space, that's also why we talk about everything we talk about on the show, because while there are so many similarities in our practices, a lot of what you experience is going to be unique to you. It's going to be unique to what you allow yourself to look at, what you allow yourself to practice. If you show up, if you connect with yourself every day, we all have different sensitivities in terms of, like, you know, some of us are more sensitive to energy feelings. Some of us are more clairvoyant, where we see things. All of these things will make your practice unique to you. So just like Michelle shared, you don't want to doubt yourself. If anything, you want to further investigate what it is you're experiencing. And I talk a lot about people allowing themselves to be observers of their practice. So stay curious in whatever it is that you're doing. And journaling is such a beneficial part of our spiritual development, because you do start to piece together and start to understand what it is you're experiencing, how you work with energy personally, like your own way, what fits you and what works for you. And there's so much in this that can't be articulated. And there's so much in this that really no one will be able to validate for you, because it's your practice, it's your experience, it's your journey. Did someone want to share? I hear a microphone. Are you going to share?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, see, it wasn't even connecting for me at first for some reason. I was like, I don't know if I'm on here or not. I can't barely see anything. But I just listened to Michelle's entire thing.
Oh, your reception is out. You completely went out. So maybe when she gets back to a place with better reception, we'll be able to hear what she wanted to share. But yeah, I just want to emphasize that, you know, if you ever have questions about your practice too, I mean, you can always email me. I'll bring it up on the show, or join us in the Seeker Circle, because everyone posts questions and everyone shares stories about whatever's coming up for them. So it's a great place to, you know, just have community and exchange. Leslie, are you back? Yep, I guess her reception is really off. But anyway, so one of the main things of Reiki Radio, again, has been about exploring what happens for us after class. And that's where, like, the real learning begins. And it's usually after class that we find that we have all of these questions, because that's where we start to dig into what our experiences are. So again, if you are new to the podcast, there are archives. There's almost 300 episodes, I can't even believe it, of information that goes into different areas of different experiences we have. And, you know, how these shifts that occur within us may play into our relationships, play into our friendships, play into feeling aligned or not with our path and our purpose, and how we gain confidence in our practice, and how we start to translate all of these things. I mean, there's so much information here available to all of you. And one of the things I really did want to do today is, I was hoping that we could learn more about your personal processes with Reiki, because it is something that I love hearing, is other people's stories. But I also know it's kind of hard with everyone's time differences. But if you are here and you have something you'd like to share about your experience with Reiki, your practice with Reiki, or if you have a question, please feel free. And again, you guys all have the ability to unmute yourself or come on video. Come and let's chat. If not, I will keep talking to you.
I have a question.
Okay. Hi, beautiful. Oh, hi, turtle.
So I'm kind of curious. I don't have a ton of experience with Reiki, but the few sessions that I have had always started with going through the chakras and like, I don't know if it was like a measuring or a clearing to begin, but can you speak to that? Like, is there something about wanting to make sure that they're all open before you do Reiki, or?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question, because honestly, it depends on the practitioner. So there's something in Reiki called Biosin scanning, where basically the practitioner will hover above you and get a sense of like where energy may be flowing freely and where it may feel stuck or blocked, or just where there may be an energetic imbalance. So a lot of times people will go through each of the chakras just to gauge where they may want to spend more time in your space personally, because your sacral chakra may be way open and you're like flowing in your creativity, but maybe it's excessive and then your heart is shut down because it's guarded. They would actually know like, okay, I'm going to work on both, but for two different reasons.
Right.
You see what I mean? Yeah. But the chakra system in energy work is like a beautiful roadmap that helps us with everything. One, to gauge our own alignment, to notice where we may be imbalanced, but it's also a good roadmap that's used in terms of making sure we're in these various channels of energy that support us. So like making sure at the root we're in body, making sure at the sacral we're in our creativity, in our emotion, at the solar plexus making sure we're in our confidence, making sure we're in our vulnerability, making sure we're in our voice, we're comfortable to use it, in our sight, in our connectivity. So it's a pretty good map for people to use as it's like a tool in a way.
Can you tell if so let's say a chakra is not open.
Mm-hmm.
What is registered in the energy there? Like, can you tell maybe what would help open it, or can you tell what might be causing the impasse, so to speak?
Yeah, well, that's also a really good question. Oh, you're good with these. Maybe we should talk to a bunch of people who are very unfamiliar with Reiki. That's a good question. So yeah, again, it also depends on the practitioner. So there's two sides to this. Some people are very intuitive in the work that they do. So they will get messages or impressions around people's energy and what they're holding. But it's not always the case with every practitioner, and it's really not necessary for Reiki. So the beauty of it is that even if you aren't intuitive, or even if you don't know how to translate what someone's holding, the purpose of what the person is doing for you is literally like they're holding space to help you rebalance within yourself. So it's not like the Reiki practitioner is like giving something to you, as much as like they're holding this energetic space that is like, I like to think of it as like encouraging your own energy to then find its own rebalancing. So you'll get what you need or what you allow, even if the practitioner has no idea of what or why you're blocked, so to speak.
So is that related to like moving energy? Like, can we speak to that a little bit? What does it mean to move energy, and how does that affect, I don't know, like, I guess the release of things, or?
Yeah. One of the things that's coming up to say first about that is, when we don't recognize how much power we have in our functionality and how our system runs. And I think a lot of times we have no idea of how much we allow or resist against the flow of energy in our fields. So like on a very basic level, it's kind of like, like say you have to go have a tough conversation with someone, and you start to feel it in your stomach, like you start to get knots in your stomach and you're just like, oh, I can't, and you start to feel sick, that's literally like a way of recognizing what's happening to your system, both energetically and on a physical level. Now, you could then come face to face with this person and decide, like, I'm not going to say it. So you stuff and repress that. And then all of a sudden now you have contributed to this like lodging of something that really, there's this part of you that wanted to express it. So it's kind of like when we don't allow ourselves to express, that energy is still going somewhere. And if we didn't let it come out, it then starts to just find pockets in our system and just kind of be like, oh, well, I'm chilling, you know? And so when we allow ourselves to do any practice of energy movement, whether yoga is a good one, you know, you're a yoga
Yeah,
teacher.
I was just going to bring that up. Yeah.
Yeah, so it doesn't have to be Reiki, so to speak, but anything that we do that allows ourselves to like move energy through us. And I'm sure you know, in yoga, people will end up crying on the mat. They don't know why, just the release is happening. So it's very similar to that. It's just another method of doing that, like letting yourself move in some way.
Well, this might be presumptuous. I would think sometimes the yoga postures that can cause that release are rather painful. So I feel like Reiki might be a gentler way to move energy. But perhaps I'm not very experienced to say that. I don't know.
No, but that's also a good point. You're like on fire. Like, yes, this should be the whole show. Like, Turtle, come ask me questions. No, but it's not always, because it can be challenging. Like, people can be on the table, and if they are resisting the movement of something, or if something is starting to move and it is more like stuck, so to speak, the person may experience discomfort. Okay. So yeah, when someone's receiving Reiki, it's not always relaxing and comfortable for them. There are times where people are very uncomfortable. It reminds me of one time I had one of my teachers asked me to come in to be a participant for people to practice on. And I had 5 or 6 people working on me at the same time.
That's weird. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. When I tell you, I wanted to jump off the table within like the first 30 seconds because it was so much movement, so intense. And I was just like, oh, I felt like I was coming out of my skin. And after a few minutes, it did pass because, you know, but I mean, there are parts of it that can be very uncomfortable.
What is that like for the practitioner, having definitely never given Reiki to someone? Do you feel, if they're resisting, do you feel that resistance?
Yeah, sometimes you can. So a lot of times it's very, even visually, kind of like, even I'm sure as a yoga teacher, you can tell when people aren't breathing. You can tell when someone's like totally clenched and their defenses are up and they're just like, they won't allow themselves to relax. They're tense, and, you know, so sometimes when that happens, I will tell the person, like, you know, I'll guide them like in a very short meditation to release tension and just allow themselves to like melt into the table. But also it's important for people on the receiving end to know that there's nothing they need to do. You know, some people get so caught up in their head of thinking they have to participate in the session of like, am I doing this right? Am I being a good client? Like, all you have to do is chill out. And I mean, you could take a nap if you want to, but you know, it's kind of like just letting yourself melt and observe whatever. But yes, you do notice when people are in resistance.
I think I get like that sometimes. I maybe not so much in Reiki but I felt that too. I mean, you know, you get told, even like Shavasana and yoga, or, you know, you get told to relax, and sometimes you tense up. And it's like people who sit down to meditate, right? Like, am I doing this right? Do I, you know, they almost get all rigid and sitting up rimrod and all this, you know, but it actually is impeding their ability to meditate when they tense up in that way. And they start to overthink the process, you know?
Yes.
But I think that there is kind of like a, especially when you don't fully understand like what's happening or what's supposed to happen. I think you kind of, well, and there's too, I think, an eagerness to heal, right? Or like whatever's drawn you to the appointment or the session. Yeah, I'm curious too, like, do you know if there's a tie between like breath work and Reiki, for example?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, it's funny because this is like very yoga specific too, but you're reminding me of this in a lot of ways. The breath work part is what I'm going to share with you. But Michelle, who was here earlier, she was sharing that she is now about to go into her yoga teacher training. And one of the things about yoga teacher training that people may not know, it's also very emotional. Like, it's not just about the postures, the asanas. I mean, there's a lot of self-work and healing that goes on in yoga teacher training. And just the same is true with Reiki and the practice. So that's why it's really important for people to understand if they're learning Reiki, like, it's not just like, oh, I learn it and then I go out and help everyone. It is very important to do that self-work so that you can go through that process of your own healing, not just so that you become a clearer channel, but you also have more of an openness and awareness when you're holding space for people who are about to go through this like shedding of feeling and emotion and whatever may come up for them. So the breath work part, I think it may have been, I don't know, it was a few years into my Reiki practice, and I was in a meditation and I kept hearing, like, go to yoga teacher training. And I was like, why? I don't want to be a yoga teacher. Like, I have no interest in, I don't want to do that. It's like, you have to go. I was getting this message to go specifically to learn how to connect with the breath and to understand the importance of the breath. So I took yoga teacher training for that purpose. And again, had no idea how emotional and how healing and all the layers of it that was included. But what I learned through yoga that supported me in Reiki was that just allowing, like just being and allowing the breath to move and allowing the energy to be directed on the breath and not trying to force and not trying to control and all of these things. The yoga practice really heightened that for me. Oh, you're muted, I think.
Sorry, it is definitely a pretty intense process to go through yoga teacher training, because generally they work kind of from the mind and from philosophy to the body. They kind of go in that direction, and
Yep.
It's a fascinating process for sure. I'd also like to ask about attunement, what exactly that is and the purpose.
Yeah. That's a really good question. It's funny. I literally just had this conversation a couple of days ago. So the attunement process, I guess I should back up and say there's also something called a reiju, which is known as like a spiritual blessing. Actually, I want to back up a little more and say the person who is, so you'll hear a lot this name Yusui. Yusui is the person who Reiki came through, or the practice of Reiki, the person who Reiki originated with. But with that, like, we also have to note that Reiki is not the only form of energy healing. It wasn't the first method of energy healing in all of this. Another part of that we have to point out is that Yusui, it's not like he was just like some commoner and then one day, like, boom, he had this Reiki experience. He was also a Buddhist, and he also was connected to other spiritual practices, whether through like Buddhism, Shintoism, all of these things. So he was already in, like, practice of self-connection in very deep ways, and probably, very connected to different, what we would consider like esoteric ideas and principles and all of these things prior to having the experience he had that led to what we now consider Reiki. So anyway, in that, part of the attunement process was called a reiju, which translates as like a spiritual blessing. And the best way I could describe it is, it's like, imagine I have worked on my energy so much that I've strengthened my energy to some degree. Now you're full of the same life force energy as me. You also have this energetic presence just as I do. I just may be more aware of mine, and I may have strengthened mine because of my awareness, right? So then I am now coming into your space to hold this certain like frequency with the intention of you now awakening to that same essence within yourself. And so then it's almost like holding space in this nonverbal communication, this energetic exchange, where because of the space I'm holding, it's like an invitation in a way for you then to awaken to this light or this essence of life within yourself. That's probably the best way I could describe it, because there's a lot of ideas around it that like the Reiki master is giving something to you and that I'm not giving you anything.
Is it when you say an invitation, I sort of imagine that my vibration is then sort of invited to vibrate at the same frequency as yours, or does that make sense?
Yeah, it's more like imagine again, like in a non-physical or outwardly expressed way, that this part of you goes like, oh, okay, here I am. And you start to move deeper into that like awareness or awakening or strengthening of your own life force in the way that you nurture it personally. So, if you then, after that process, that attunement between us, if you then take the time to practice daily meditation, practice self-connection, you're going to strengthen that in your own speed. I mean, you could go beyond me, like, you know what I mean? Like, it has nothing to do. We're the ones that facilitate how deep and how far we go with our own energy.
I see. And then when you're practicing on somebody else, does your own energy ever get like triggered, or does that make sense? Does it ever get activated in a way that you need to sort of say, whoa, or like brush it aside? Or, I know that like at least with intuition or people who maybe are more connected to spirit, like mediums and stuff like that, that there's this need to recognize sort of the boundaries and recognize when it's your stuff versus like the outer stuff or somebody else's stuff.
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. And it is a big part of the practice. That's why at the core, like one of the things I think is so foundational and important for people is to become very familiar first with their own energy. Because the truth is, a lot of us, we're not familiar with ourselves. So once you start to recognize you and how you function and what your energy feels like, what it looks like, however your own translation is, you then become very aware of like what's yours and what's not. And in terms of being triggered in sessions, yeah, you can absolutely. I mean, there are people who are very empathic and they may feel someone's sadness and start to cry. But it's also that layer of why it's also important to be aware of your energy and learn how to be neutral, learn how to be in that space of like non-judgment, learn how to be in that space of like just holding space, which unfortunately isn't normally talked about in Reiki classes, and kind of goes back to like why I even started the podcast, because there were so many aspects that I realized about this practice after class that wasn't talked about in class. So yeah, I mean, you can absolutely be triggered, and that's why it's really important to work on you so you can manage those things and not, yeah.
Yeah, I like that. It reminds me of body disassociation, like from the perspective of yoga, right? And how doing the practice of yoga can reconnect you with your physical body and in a way that you feel safe within your body. So if you think about the different layers, right? The layers of our person, right? We've got our physical body and our astral layer, and I think there's like 7 in total. But I like that idea that it's like we have this other body, so to speak, or layer of ourselves that we need to reassociate with.
Yes.
Like familiarize ourselves with our own energy.
Yep.
That's a really fascinating way to look at it.
Yeah, and it's so true. I mean, like, you're so dead on with that. And what's interesting is as we become, because I think that comes to the forefront for people right away, like after they have an attunement and once they start practicing, you become hyper aware of energy. so much so that some people go through like periods of being annoyed and like don't want to be around anyone because they're so sensitive to energy. And it is like you have to acclimate to it and start to like settle into this new heightened awareness. But what starts to happen also over time in that is you start to become very aware of your physicality and what it means to be energetic in this physical thing. And so it all starts coming together. And I'll share this with you because since you're like new to Reiki, in Reiki Level 2, you learn these Reiki symbols, and the different symbols come from different things. So like the first symbol is a symbol that comes from Shintoism, but it is very much related to earth energy, groundedness, and it looks like a spiral. And so it really tunes us into that journey in to ourselves. And that's the foundation of where we start, like being grounded and coming in. And then the second symbol comes from this seed syllable called Hri. And there's this whole story about this Senju Kanan, and I won't tell you right now, but it basically, the symbol is meant to rid us of bad habits. But it's really thought of as the emotional or mental symbol because it brings us into our process of thought and what goes on in our framework of consciousness and how it influences how we perceive and act and behave and all of these things. So you see, like already, it's like first you start in body, come into yourself. Next, you go on to what's going to help you come into your right mind and rid yourself of bad habit, which often is just our thoughts. And it also tunes us into our emotion. And then the third symbol in level 2 is called the distance symbol, but it's really about dissolving the illusion of separation. So once you've grounded into yourself, worked on that mental aspect, mental emotional, then you start to tune into this like non-duality, like I'm separate from no thing. So it really, even in the system of Reiki, there's like this process or building of how to go deeper into your own beingness.
Yeah. No, that's, I just keep coming back to even the process of, so in yoga, I might describe to someone how they can start to notice sensations within the body. And I can see already the benefit of being able to sense the energy that's behind those sensations, and being able to tap into that. And I can't even really imagine it, but I suppose that if you became more familiar with Reiki and you were practicing it on yourself, then you would become better at manipulating it,
Oh, yes. Yeah. And that's one of the things I think was most shocking in coming into this awareness of being energetic is you do become hyper aware of how we all manipulate everything. Like we're in a constant state of manipulating energy, whether it's our own, but usually people put more effort in trying to manipulate externally, but it's true. The beauty in that is that not only do you then come into this awareness and responsibility for yourself, you also start to recognize that you actually have choice in your functionality and how you want to manipulate your own energy. But you also then become aware of not falling into the manipulation of others energetically.
Something grabbed me about what you said in having choice. I think that some people certainly prefer to have.
I just went on Facebook because I just noticed we had comments and I didn't turn how we do on Jaya.
Yeah.
You have to turn the volume down. Sorry.
Yeah, I was just thinking about choice and how some people prefer that. People who generally, I think, prefer control would prefer to have choice because then they can take action, right? But how would you speak to that from people who actually don't prefer and maybe even tend towards victimhood? Mm-hmm. How does that relate in an energy way?
Yeah, I think if anything, they will find themselves in a lot of challenge in their healing process. Because if nothing else, one of the things that happens because it's like once you become aware of your energy, you can't like become unaware of it. You know what I mean? And once that energy starts moving through you, there is a lot that does come to the surface and into your awareness. And we could deny it and we could fight it and be in resistance around it, but it's only going to make your personal process a lot more challenging. And I think, and even in my own experience, a lot of the resistance is what sends us plummeting into that dark night of the soul, or into that, I call it spiritually undone, that space of like discomfort where you just hit rock bottom because you are trying so hard to hold on to your old stuff. And then once you hit the bottom, it's usually where we're like, oh, okay, maybe there's another way, and maybe, but yeah, I mean, when we are wanting to cling to certain things that aren't necessarily healthy for us or not serving us, we just usually find that our journey is more challenging. Some people stay there, but a lot of people end up, you get knocked down enough, punched in the face enough by the universe. A lot of people finally go like, okay, I surrender. What am I ready to do differently?
Is there, this might be a weird question, but for somebody who's just like maybe interested in exploring Reiki on an individual level, not necessarily ready to go have a session or go to a class or something like that, is there something that you can do on your own to start to become aware of that energy layer of yourself?
Totally. Yeah. I always joke, like if for some reason I could only practice one thing ever again, it would be meditation. Because truly, like all of these different tools that we talk about, whether it's like our intuitive development, our energetic connection, being in our recognition of choice and all of these things, we can attain all of that and strengthen our energy in meditation. So, and honestly, I mean, meditation is like the foundational practice of like every spiritual practice. So everything that I've studied and trained in over the years, they've all started with meditation. So yeah, if you want to become more familiar with yourself, your energetic presence, and just self-awareness, meditation is a great way of doing that. But because that is challenging for people who, want to get it right and control and like, how do I do this? I think Reiki for some people is like a more tangible way of like really quickly letting them have the experience of like, whoa, I can feel energy. Okay. Or, oh, things are shifting. But either way, you're going to, all of these tools, even tarot and astrology, all of these things, they all point us right back in, right to ourselves.
Yeah. It's amazing the amount of wisdom that's hidden inside, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's why I have on my site, The Secret Is You. Because I mean, at this point, I really believe that it is like everything that we use and everything we are looking for and everything. I mean, it all just, it all comes right back to us. All of it. Like nothing doesn't.
Yeah. I love how empowering that is too, as a person who enjoys choice and the option to be in control or to take action. I think is really, I hate to use the word control because I think it has a negative connotation, but I like the option to take action, to not say, oh, the world is happening to me, but to say, what can I do out in the world,
Right. And really consider like, how am I participating? Because I think in a lot of ways, just like you said, we think like our life is happening to us as if we're outside of our choice. And it's like everything we're doing, we are constantly every day in a series of choices. Am I going to Starbucks or not? Am I going to eat that sandwich or not? Am I going to argue or not? Am I going to react from my emotion or not? Like every piece of this experience comes back to the choice that we have and our choice in how we participate and show up in all of these layers. But yeah, I think one of the biggest gifts of Reiki over these years has been the deepening of my self-awareness, but I also really have become consciously aware of even the energy I bring into environments and the impact we have on each other. So it then doesn't just become like, oh, what Turtle is doing to me or what anybody's doing to me, but how am I showing up and what may my projections be doing to you? You
Mm-hmm.
know, and you know this, like a lot of times when we think of it in terms of like, oh man, how am I impacting somebody else? Sometimes that makes us more responsible or willing to be responsible to be kinder, or, you know, not wanting to like muck things up for other people. So
yeah. Well, I was just thinking how, as a tarot reader and even an astrology reader, a lot of times, you know, people come to me with their biggest questions, you know, like, should I stay in this relationship, or should I leave this job? You know, some of the biggest parts of our lives that, of course, can create a lot of stress because you don't want to make the wrong move, you know,
right.
Or you're afraid of making your life worse somehow, worse than, you know, maybe the tension you're currently feeling. And I'm curious how Reiki might apply in that environment.
Yeah, well, one of the things, again, like I think it does start to highlight for us, like the role that we play in our life and our energy and like how we show up in general. What it has done for me personally is like really brought me into the realization of like dissolving the harshness on myself about, you know, the expectations and like where they even come from and the right and wrong and good and bad. Because I mean, especially when it comes to decision, I know there's going to be like consequence on either side of the coin. There's going to be an experience on either side of the coin. So that it really comes down to like, well, which one am I really want to have? And what am I more motivated towards experiencing at this time? But I think, and again, it really comes down to, when I tell people Reiki is such a personal journey and experience, because some people will go to a Reiki class or go to a Reiki session and really dig into what the experience of that is and how it shows up in their life. And there are other people who may have a session or a class and just walk away and be like, oh, that was great.
Mm-hmm.
And completely, you know, move into a space of oblivion or resisting whatever is coming up for them. So even that comes down to choice.
Yeah, that's true. Very, very true.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose you can, you know, you can really probably find any one of these modalities to seek insight into yourself, right?
Yes.
And again, connect with how you're showing up in your own environment, which is really all we ever have control over, right? Is how we're showing up. So,
and there you go. It's how we show up. And over these past 5 years, I've ended every podcast with remember to journey in love, because that's also a choice. But before we go, I just want to point out a couple of things about Turtle. I'm so glad, one, that you're here. But for those of you who follow me on Instagram, I think it was like a month or two ago, I posted this beautiful tarot spread and talked about the reading that I had. This is the person who did it. This is Turtle. And if you are interested in having a tarot or astrology reading done by her, go to bravingthelight.com. And it's interesting that you're the one that I'm sitting here across with today, because this work that we're doing together now has come like in this evolution of my journey. So here, Reiki Radio has been going on for 5 years now. And then Turtle and I are in this new collective with 2 other women, Jennifer and Adrienne, called the Jaya Collective. And so, yeah, it's like you never know how this journey is going to unfold, the beautiful souls that you'll end up connecting with, and how the work keeps progressing. So be sure to join us in the Jaya Collective every Friday morning on Facebook. And we're doing a live event this Friday at 7 a.m. Pacific, which is 10 a.m. Eastern. And you can follow that podcast on iTunes as well under Jaya Collective. So I'm so glad you were here, honey.
Me too. I'm glad I could make it.
I loved it.
Thank you.
So, and thank you to everyone for being here with me for 5 years. And for anyone who's new, welcome to the community. And you can join us in the Seeker Circle on Facebook and have some behind the scenes chat. So thank you. Bye, Turtle.
Bye.